recruiting on offthehooksports.com, your home for real news, real opinions, and what really matters about Tennessee athletics. The Off the Hook podcast at offthehooksports.com or Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or wherever you go for your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, iHeart. Like, share, follow, subscribe. Off the Hook with Dave Hooker starts now.
With Chris Landry, I'm Dave Hooker, brought to you by the Mattress Place. This is Chalk Talk, and we're going to break down Tennessee football recruiting on the episode today. Please go ahead and click on that like button or that subscribe button, and you're going to get sneak peeks of content with Chris Landry, content with current Tennessee players like Jacob Warren and Cooper Mays. So we got a lot going on. And this conversation with Chris, and if you haven't been to LandryFootball.com, you need to. This conversation with Chris is brought to you by the Mattress Place. 22 years on Chapman Highway, Marine Corps veteran owned. So we thank you, sir, especially as this is the week of Independence Day. Without people like you, Steve, we would not enjoy that independence. So we really, you know, we're talking, Chris, before we came on. We really don't know the amount of, let's call it flipitude, that could happen in recruiting with all this NIL and the accelerated calendar. So I don't know. What do you think? I can always remember the commitment was just a commitment, but now we're in a totally different calendar. Is a commitment definitely a commitment from July to December when they can first sign?
Not definite. I mean, I think it's why in this day and age, you're recruiting your verbal commitments as hard as you're recruiting guys that haven't committed, because you want to make sure that you keep them, and because other people are recruiting your committed guys. What has been happening in recent years, and NIL has been around for a year. It's a 1 year. It's literally the anniversary was last week of the NIL, but this is really, people didn't have time to get the collectives together. This is the first kind of, we had the last class and how it ended with a heavy use of NIL, but this is kind of the first full year of this is how it's done, and we'll see if we have a lot of flipping. So what has been happening is in recent years, pre-NIL, is we have guys that will commit, but maybe they're committed to a school that's maybe been a little bit higher on them. But if there is one of, let's just call it the premier top 5 or 6 schools, offer them late, that may be their favorite school. Alabama hasn't offered him, but if they offer him in November, he really wants to go there, be part of that program. Georgia, those, then they'll leave who they committed and go to them. But in the age of NIL, is how much have they been told about what they're likely to get, or if it's, and I know it's illegal to induce them in recruiting to give them NIL money, is that going to affect this a little bit more? Are they going to be more committed because what at least they've been told they're going to get, or is because it's not binding if somebody matches that, or, let's just say you got a deal. You're going to make $100,000 if you come here. I'm just throwing out figures. And I'm not talking about any particular player. And all of a sudden, somebody really likes you in the end, and it's a school that you really like. You're committed to school A, but school B says, no, we can do 250. Well, I'm going to tell you, that kid's going to probably go to the 250 school, even though they're not supposed to be in using it for recruiting inducements. It will be. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think that early commitments and I think early rankings are fine. But, boy, take them with a grain of salt, because that's not the way it's going to look in December, because things are going to change.
One of the guys we're talking about is Francis Mauigoa, and depending on when you're listening to this podcast, he may or may have not committed to Tennessee, scheduled on July the 4th in the afternoon. But given that nobody is absolutely 100% binded to any commitment, they could flip. I do want to get your thoughts, no matter where he's announced on the 4th, of just him as a player, because I'd defer to you on things like this, and you have clearly spoken very highly of him.
I think he is a a superb player. I mean, he's 6'5", he's 330-pound guy that I think he can play anywhere in the country. I think he's got NFL type ability down the road if he does things like he's supposed to do. I think he's a road grader in the run game. I think he's got to improve his pass set, but I think he can be a great player. Again, how much he lives to that depends on how committed, how hard he works, and all of that. Don't know him personally. The coaches tell me he's a good kid, works hard, bright, all those type of things. But there's no question um, that he's, in my opinion, on tape, he's definitely one of the top 10, 15 players in this recruiting class I've seen at any position, and I think as good as any tackle that I've seen.
Please like and subscribe. Again, Chalk Talk brought to you by the Mattress Place there on Chapman Highway, 30 to 70% off every day. That's no gimmick. That is the Mattress Place, and they will take care of you. Along those lines, let's set Mauigoa aside. Tennessee had picked up a handful of 3-star commitments over the past week since their big official visit weekend. Should Tennessee fans be somewhat confident, very confident, extremely confident in Josh Heupel's ability to evaluate 3-star guys and determine if they're at an SEC level?
I would say somewhat confident. I think, and we've talked about those guys, I think they have good schematic fits for them, but I don't think we need to go overboard. I mean, I don't think we need to say just, I mean, it's Pollyanna to say, oh yeah, they're going to be great. They're better than everybody else thinks, and they're smarter than everybody, and I think it's ridiculous to say, oh, what are they doing? They're not recruiting. It's only a 3-star. That stuff. Look, I think time will tell. There are a number of good players that get evaluated and that are evaluated 3 stars that really are better than that. I think these guys that they have are good schematic fits, as I mentioned, and I think will be good players for them. But I think I would classify it as somewhat confident that they're doing well. But I think it's important that they get some of these elite guys too if they want to get into the elite level and just be a good program and take it to the next versus taking it to the next step.
At the end of the day, if Tennessee just has one elite prospect, and that would be Nico Mauigoa, they're probably a little bit disappointed, Tennessee fans are, if they don't bring in another guy like a Mauigoa. If the class stood right now and was filled out by 3-star guys, I think Tennessee fans would be displeased. Is that fair?
Yeah, because here's the thing. People focus on the wrong things, in my opinion. They focus on these rankings. Well, Tennessee's ranked at this and 11, 10, 5, whatever. Doesn't matter right now. The elite schools are not going to be ranked high for the most part because they're going to be a little bit more selective. So when you're Florida State and you're ranked number 1 in recruiting, which they were last year at this time, and they end up, barely in the top 25, that's a huge disappointment because the expectation, well, we were number 1. What happened? You're number 1 because the others haven't really put their classes together yet, the elite ones. I do think that maybe getting a couple of these guys in that 5-star range. Look, it may be disappointing. Whether it's disappointing or not, what's going to have to happen is they're going to have to begin to recruit more and more like the Georgias and Alabamas.
Right.
If they're going to compete against the Georgias and Alabamas. If you're comfortable and happy with them being really good and maybe winning 8, 9, 10 games and going to good bowls, I think they're in that point, in that stage.
I would think that, excuse me, being at UCF, not necessarily going against Florida and Miami and Florida State, but everybody recruits in Florida. I would think that being at UCF would help Heupel in determining what 3-stars are contributors and not, because he probably had to take, I imagine, a lot of those guys at UCF, right?
Absolutely. And again, I think with their style and their system is a little bit different. So they can take a guy that is really athletic but is undersized as a linebacker, for example, that wouldn't fit in Alabama because Alabama can get the fastest and the biggest. And whereas if you got to give up something, what are you willing to give up? And well, you're not going to give up speed in this system. So I think that they have a good feel for what to look for. Now, did have a lot of success there, but they're having to take those type of guys and win against SEC competition. So you're correct in terms of how to do it. They've learned how to do it, but then now doing it against a different level of competition in the SEC, of course, is something that remains to be seen how consistently good they can be doing it.
Chalk Talk with Chris Landry. Like and subscribe to this video. We'd certainly appreciate it. You get sneak peeks at YouTube, but go to LandryFootball.com to know more about football than anybody in your circle. It is just that awesome. LandryFootball.com. Chris does an amazing job. So I'm curious, and I'm going to kind of put you on the spot and come out of left field. What's the best offensive lineman that you've ever graded coming out of high school? Or you can give me a collective.
Yeah, I can tell you, Jonathan Ogden went St. Albans High School in Washington, D.C. In fact, he was I had a scout come into LSU, and I was doing work for Blesto and tell me about, hey, there's this kid you ought to check out. He's a freshman in high school, and he was the best I've seen, and was pretty good. I thought he was the best player in that draft that year coming out of UCLA.
He was pretty good. Yeah, it was
Hall of Fame good.
There's very few of those guys that you point to, and even the draft process, and say, barring something significant happening physically on or off the field, this guy is going to be a Hall of Famer. But he felt like that on draft day, which was very, very odd.
Absolutely. No, he was a great player, great athlete. Played guard the first year in the NFL with the Ravens, and to learn the position, which is a good move for him, and was a all Hall of Fame left tackle.
Yeah. Who are some other guys some offensive linemen that you go back? I wonder about a Munoz, either Anthony or the son that showed up at Tennessee. I'm just curious if there's anybody else that ranked high.
Well, I didn't recruit Anthony, but I certainly scouted him in the NFL. By the way, Anthony there were 28 teams in the NFL that year. At that time, 26 flunked Anthony Munoz on the medical physical. That's who the Jets wanted to take, but they flunked him because medically he had some major problems. But he had a great long career. He was good. John Hanna was great. A little bit before my time, he was great. He had a lot of good ones. I had Eric Andelsek and a number of them at LSU that were really good as well.
Arguably, John Hanna and Reggie White, the best offensive and defensive linemen, are both from, in the history of the NFL, I'm just making that argument. I'm not saying I believe that. Both from Chattanooga.
That's right.
Just kind of, that's weird, if nothing else. Go to LandryFootball.com to learn more about whether it be college football recruiting or the NFL. And Chris has already gone on record as saying my Dallas Cowboys will win the Super Bowl this year, and all of those decades of disappointment are over. So it's a column that I think is titled "What Would Make Dave Happy."
Sit. It don't have it up there yet, but now you've given me something to work with, so I'll get on it.
Okay, and for those that don't know, Chris and I are both Celtics fans. Trading for Kevin Durant is A, a really good idea, B, really, really stupid.
I don't know. He seems to be a lot of problem, but boy, he is awfully talented. I would have to think on that. I would probably say, yeah, take him and let's take my chances.
Yeah, from when I saw him in December play the Hawks, I would take the last 5 minutes. I wouldn't take the rest of the game. So he's Chris Landry. I'm Dave Hooker. Thank you to the Mattress Place. Chalk Talk each and every week. Have a fantastic week, and we will talk to you next week with Chris Landry at LandryFootball.com. I'm Dave Hooker, a presentation of Off Book Sports.